Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Lori. This is Ask Dr. Lori Live. It's good to be with all of you. I'm going to take your questions. Your questions should have some kind of relationship for everybody can learn something new. So again, please format your questions that way. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. The newsletter has all kinds of great information in it, money saving and money finding information in the newsletter. And that goes out. All you have to do is go to our website, drloriv.com, go to the free thumbs up tab and put in your email. We'll send it out. We send out the newsletter regularly, and yes, it is free. So my lots of you, I'm asking you to type in your questions. If you have a question, type it in. You don't have to type it in a million times and keep repeating typing it in. Type it in once. We'll get to it. We'll go from there. Yeah, I can explain the differences and value on Trifari crown and later Trifari marks. A couple of different things. Crown Trifari marks, there's two types of crown Trifari marks, in fact, or they are, in fact, they start out in the late 1930s, they go until 1955, and then that's a crown Trifari mark on a piece of Trifari costume jewelry. And then in 1955, a copyright symbol gets placed on in before the crown Trifari mark. And that goes on until the late 1960s, 1969. So those are basically, in terms of value, you have two marks, but they're different time periods. So some people think older is always more valuable, but that's not always the case. Just because it's old doesn't mean it's more valuable. So you want to think about that. Most of the pieces that date to that late 1930s to about the mid 1950s time period with the crown Trifari mark are those pieces that, of course, are designed by Philippe. And Philippe is a big designer for Trifari. He's very important in the history of costume jewelry. And the pieces that are being designed by Trifari and others, of course, working with Trifari, those pieces are trying to mimic great pieces of fine jewelry, and specifically the jewelry of Coco Chanel. I talk about this on the website at drloriv.com. Whole article about explaining all of the different Trifari marks, all the different time periods, and of course, values. In terms of value, you can find value in a 1980s Trifari piece, and you can find value, of course, in a 1930s Trifari piece. It's going to depend on the design, the materials, and how intricate the design is. Always look for the Trifari mark. It will, in fact, impact value. Most of the time, you're going to see, of course, those classic mid-century modern designs of the late 30s to the late 1960s being very, very desirable. When you have other designers trying to look like Trifari, like the Kenneth J. Lanes of the world, you're going to, of course, see even more value in those pieces. I like you to know what to look for. That's why I talk in lists for you. So look for crown Trifari. Look for copyright, which is the C in the circle, crown Trifari. Don't forget to look for just straight Trifari and also Trifari TM. All these marks mean value when you're at the thrift store, the yard sale, the estate sale, or you're digging through grandma's jewelry box. But look for those marks. And on my website, if you go to the website and you search it, you can search the website and you can just put in Trifari or costume jewelry and all of it will come up. The search is very easy. It's the magnifying glass icon on my website. It's easy to, of course, find. You can go from there. Now, speaking of searching, a lot of you are asking questions about particular things on the table. Oh, this is on the table and I saw this on your table and you didn't talk about it. Or what is that painting or this kind of thing. You're welcome to ask these questions. But if you search the channel, again, there's a search feature on the channel at YouTube, Dr. Lori V. You can just search the channel for what you're looking for and all the videos will come up. It's an easy way for you to, of course, find the answers to those kinds of questions. So, great. Good to see you. I love the questions. Let's see what we've got. Does the stamp sterling followed by a number indicate an older object than one stamped 925? Not necessarily. Sterling and 925 can actually, a piece can be not marked stamped sterling, a piece can be stamped 925 in the same year. Just depends. Not always. Is it always older? So I know you're trying to have all the clues to figure something out. I want you to look at design. I want you to look at materials. You're looking at sterling. And I want you to look at what these pieces, what some of the manufacturers and the names are. And then you can start to identify by date. But first of all, you want to look for good materials, good condition, like I always teach you, to identify quality. And that's what I want you to be able to see as well. Thank you very much, Vintage and Collectibles, for the super chats and super stickers. It helps to support us, and I appreciate that, and I'm happy to answer your questions. So thank you for that. I know many of you are very, very grateful, and this is one of the ways that you can show your gratitude. I appreciate it. And of course, I'm glad that you're learning. I want you to succeed. I don't want to compete with you. I want you to succeed. That's why I'm trying to teach you this stuff. I have a large Renoir print. I was curious to its value. I think it's from around 1950. Okay, the reason this particular question may seem like I don't have a Renoir print, but I can't learn anything from this. Here's why this might be important to all of you. Many of you will find, in fact, prints or colo-type prints, which is a fancy word for poster, that are made by museums of very famous works of art by very, very famous artists like Renoir or Monet, Van Gogh or Gauguin, Matisse, whomever it might be, Picasso, very famous works of art, and they're usually prints or posters, and they're made in the middle part of the 1900s. And what they are, they're famous works of art, and the idea was museums could promote their collections and get you to come to the museum and see the real thing by actually producing these kinds of prints. So while many of you might say, well, that doesn't matter to me, so I'm going to move on. But basically, I want you to understand that a lot of these types of pieces that reproduce very famous works of art are pieces that a lot of people now are finding in thrift stores, antique malls, and such. There are people who collect these, who like to have these reproductions of course, famous works of art. And they're usually rather large. And typically value can be as low, depending on the condition and depending on the type of paper. It could be very, very low. It could be upwards into the several hundreds of dollars. Usually it's not much more than that, unless, of course, you have an actual print by the artist. The prints that I think this person is describing is, in fact, a museum reproduction print to promote a collection or a collection within a museum, an art collection. Now, if you have a piece that's been reproduced or a restrike print, right, that was made by this particular artist or based on the plates of this particular artist, then you got a whole different animal. Then it's a totally different value. How could you find out? Let me look at it. Send me a picture. It's easy to do. How do you do it? drloriv.com. On the homepage, there are 3 brown circles. It's very simple. So it looks like this. There are 3 brown circles. One of them's a camera, one of them's a phone, one of them's, of course, photographs. All you have to do is send me a picture. Those 3 brown circles tell you on the homepage that you, in fact, can send photos. You'll send photos. I'll take a look at it, and then I'll get back to you with an email. It's very simple, and many, many people, many of you have done it, and you do it multiple times, and that's great, no problem. So that would probably help me to help you. Thank you very much for your super chats and super stickers. I do appreciate it. I know a lot of you, I had video calls today and also an interview with an online lifestyle magazine today. And those particular folks were saying, hey, you know, Dr. Lori, I've found something in this particular channel that no other channel has. You're helping me to get better at this. You know, I think of one particular video caller I had today. She said, I understand the method now. I know how to do this. I know how to go online and I know what to search for. I know what's junk. I know what's not. But I still need you, Dr. Lori, to help me with the actual values because it's hard to distinguish the values. I'm getting better at understanding and educating my eyeballs. You'll do it with the loop. You'll do it with some of the other recommended products on my shopping page where I get compensation if you buy a loop or a product or a gem tester. But I want you to succeed, and that's why I want to help you. If there is no mark on a piece of glass, should you just assume it's mass-produced and not valuable? How do you find out the original price and age? Okay, it depends on what piece of glass you're looking for. Many pieces of glass are valuable and not signed. Don't think everything has to be signed. And just because something is mass-produced doesn't mean it's not valuable, right? There are a lot of things that are mass-produced that a lot of people like, want, and will trade for high numbers. So what are we looking for? It depends on the type of glass, right? It's going to be a different list for you, right? The list of what to look for, the list of the characteristics that I always talk about, that will be a little bit different on a piece of mouth-blown Italian glass, and it might be different for a piece of ruby glass cut to clear, right? Or a piece of Czechoslovakian or Polish glass, or a piece of mid-century modern glass, or maybe a piece of American Brilliant Cut crystal, right? So it depends. And that's why when you see those kinds, when I see those kinds of questions, you know, how will you know the original price and the age? Age will be based on many factors. And remember, you know, I'll use Louis Comfort Tiffany as an example. His Favril glass, very famous glass that he introduces in 1907, looks a heck of a lot like Roman glass. So even new glass is trying to look like older glass. So you might look at a piece of Favril glass by Louis Comfort Tiffany dated to 1910, say, and that piece of glass looks a heck of a lot like that Roman piece of glass from the 1st century AD. Oh my gosh, how do I know the age? It's going to depend on many factors. That's why I always tell you guys, focus your collecting or focus how you're shopping or sourcing, because it's difficult to know all of it. This is why people go, how do you know all of this? I've been doing this for 25 years as an appraiser after a PhD in this. So please, it's going to take a long time. But if you focus on one thing and just say, I just want to learn Murano, or I just want to learn about Westmoreland glass, or I just want to learn about, you name it, you're going to be able to do very well in this. So how do you know? I want you to identify the type of glass. I want you to identify condition. I want you to look for good materials. If there's no signature, don't poo-poo it just because it's not signed. It could be something valuable. Good, smart question. Good. So a lot of different things that you're thinking, Vintage Gate's coming after me with Ohio State. Hello. And go blue, baby. Go blue. Yeah. Well, it's always fun to, of course, root for your teams. I have so many teams that I root for. Some of the teams I root for are not even the schools I went to. I just love them. So there you go. Oh, that's a lot of fun. So yes, the Buckeyes will be in it. They always are. Do you know how to value vintage duck decoys? What do you think? Yes, I've evaluated a lot of vintage duck decoys. Duck decoys, you would value them in the things you want to look for in duck decoys. There you go. You want to look for good carving. You want to look for specific painting. You want to look for specific makers or carvers. You want to look for a realistic depiction, of course, of a particular type of duck. So this is important too, because what they're trying to do is that decoy is supposed to attract other ducks. So it has to convince all the other ducks who know what ducks look like, right? That they are a duck. So in fact, that's what you're looking for too, a realism in the actual carving and the painting. Condition will be important too. And don't forget materials, because I've appraised duck decoys. Some are carved wood. Some are actually made of composite materials. Some are made of a plastic. Some are made of cork. They're made of all different types of materials throughout, of course, the 20th century and before. But yes, I've evaluated many of them. I had the good fortune to appraise a fantastic collection of vintage and antique duck decoys near Virginia Beach, Virginia. I'll say that'll be enough for me to say, for those of you who know duck decoys, a fantastic collection there. So yeah, a lot of fun. And they're wonderful. And they had a great market for a long, long time. That market, of course, is seeing a nice upswing now. So that's good. Should I change the matting in my Maxfield Parish print? It's in the original frame and discolored. Okay, a couple of things. First of all, if the frame is still protecting the work and the frame is in good shape, I would leave the frame alone. I would not be surprised if you described your frame on your Maxfield Parish print. For those of you who don't know Maxfield Parish, early 20th century illustrator and of course artist, very well known for prints in what's sometimes called the fantasy art style. The frame is probably wood with blue and gold, literally a blue band and a gold band of the wood if you have the original Maxfield Parish frames. The mat can be easily replaced. You should try to stay close to the color, the original color, but an acid-free, museum quality mat. Usually it is, of course, cotton rag. They're called cotton rag mats, which every good framer will have them today. Try to cut it to the same size, ask them to replicate it, and you can put that into your other piece. Have a professional framer do it, and hopefully your piece is not glued down to a piece of cardboard from the early 20th century or some other acidic backboard. If you have an acidic backboard, they should change that out too. If you're going to change the mat, change the backboard too. You can do it. It will not negatively impact value, as long, of course, as they're careful when they do the reframing, which I'm sure they will. If you can use the original frame, use it. Don't give up the original frame. The mat is less significant. And if it's damaging the piece, then of course you do want to get rid of the old acid mat. Great question. That question helps everybody, Tracy. Thank you, sweetie. Leah, when will depression glass become popular again? I have lots of it. You have Amber Patrician Spoke. Okay, first of all, Usually we work in 100-year cycles. So depression glass is going to be indicative of the Great Depression. It will hit its 100th anniversary in 2030. Not too far off, I hate to tell you, not too far off. So you will see a spike in depression glass based on patterns of collecting. Some of the things I like you to know now, so then you can sell it later. I did a video call and my video caller said to me, Dr. Lori, I'm holding on to my American Brilliant Cut Crystal until 2026. I put it into storage actually till 2026, and then I'm going to start to market it. That's a good idea because that's going to be about the 100th anniversary. Same thing with depression glass. About 2030 is when you should see a spike. Will it become popular before that? About 3 years earlier, it will become popular again if it follows patterns that we have seen similar types of antiques follow over the centuries. So why would it be any different? Probably won't be any different. So I don't have a crystal ball, but I've been doing this a long time and I know what's going to come up next. Do you have in-person classes? I'm in Virginia, about 3 hours from me. I definitely come to one. Well, first of all, I'm more than 3 hours from Virginia, so I don't know where you are, but okay. Anyway, a couple of different, well, maybe you're in a different part of Virginia. Aren't you cute though? Look at the two of them, they're cute. A couple of different things. I have had many events which work like classes as well. And yes, you could come to any of the events. Most of the events, of course, are free. And all of my events, as well as my classes that are Zoom classes, are, of course, on my events page at drloriv.com. But thank you for asking that. And I'm very impressed that you'd want to drive hours to see me. A lot of people have done that for appraisals as well. And yeah, it would be lovely to meet all of you. I hope I get an opportunity to do that always. So thank you very much for the generous super chats and super stickers. They help to support me and my team. And my team is extremely important. They do a lot. They work 24/7, I think. I don't know how they do all that they do, but they, in fact, do a lot to, of course, continue to help me make these videos so we can get this information out to you so you can all succeed and in fact, do that. Is there a recession glass? A recession glass. So people sometimes call different types of glass recession glass when the actual design recedes into it. But technically, art historically speaking, they don't use that term. That term is something that sort of developed with folks. But a good question, a good question. Terminology is really important. You know, you see a lot of these experts using the wrong words. One of the most famous examples is Antiques Roadshow when they use patina incorrectly. You know, patina has come into the vernacular as something that's any oily buildup on anything, when really that's not what patina is at all. But you know, you can't fight City Hall, basically. Let's see. Keith Haring print have significant value, signed and dated? Yes. As a Keo, I'll tell you, a Keith Haring print will have significant value. Keith Haring, the great graffiti artist who died so young. 1958 to 1990. I did an exhibition on his work. Numerous times I've included his works in my museum exhibitions and some of the things that I've curated, the shows that I've curated. Signed and dated, very important. He did sign and date most things. If it's dated K period Haring, and then, if it's signed K period Haring and then a date, usually the value is a little bit more significant for that. It will depend on which print. It will depend on whether or not it's one of his characteristic pieces. You have Keith Haring, here's what you should be looking for. Look for the signature, look for the date, look for a nice print, a nice pull, right? Usually serigraphs or the type of print process that he preferred, right? Look for radiating babies, look for the barking dogs, look for the great graffiti pieces that he made so famous in the subways of New York in the late 1980s. But yes, that should be of some value. What do? Send me a picture. Send me a picture to the website and I'll help you out. I think the recession glass comment was in response to depression glass. Oh, okay. Maybe it was in response to depression glass. Okay, Jan, that's possible. You know, make your questions clear. That'll be helpful. When is it correct to use patina? I probably used it wrong. Patina is the patination or color that's applied to a piece of cast metal sculpture, like a bronze piece. Bronze doesn't come out in that pretty red color, that pretty green color, or that pretty brown color. That's patina. It's a coloration that's used in a foundry that's placed on top of a piece of metal, sometimes placed on top of a piece of a base metal or an inexpensive metal to make it look like a better metal. I've heard many experts actually use patina and say, ooh, the oily buildup on this wooden Chippendale table is a great patina. There's no patination on that. Patina, that doesn't have to do with, of course, the oily buildup on wood. The technical term for the oily buildup on wood is the oily buildup on wood. Patina has to do with metal and it has to do with sculpture. Good question. We want to get the vocab right. But of course, sometimes things get into our language and we just keep making the same mistake. It's not terrible. I've corrected a lot of people on it and people have gotten upset with me about correcting them. But there is a reason about patina. I've written books on sculpture. Patina is one of those things that, you got to get it right. Anyway, so there you have it. I mean, we're not going to lose sleep over patina. Anyway. Are Capodimonte pieces valuable? Cheryl, a lot of people are trading Capodimonte. Very similar to the way in which people are saying, oh, I didn't know China was popular. Everybody's liking China. And a lot of your millennials, your 30-somethings are collecting Capodimonte now. Most of the earlier Capodimonte, the pieces that you see from the middle to late 20th century rather than the late 20th century. And if you look at Capodimonte, the Italian ceramic, the cherubs, the flowers, the applied ornament, really, really, I always say my Aunt Chris, God rest her soul, had a lot of Capodimonte around the house. It was a big Italian, thing. Centerpieces and such. Hand-painted, hand-sculpted ceramic pieces, centerpieces, vases, urns, candy dishes, the whole thing, cherubs galore. There's a lot going on Capodimonte, and it is coming back in vogue, yes. Capodimonte, be careful because a lot of people will poo-poo it and then you go, oh my gosh, I didn't know it was worth that. Is it okay to remove the backing on an old picture to check for a signature under the matting? Yes, it is. You can. Be careful anything you're doing. And if you think you have to get in there with a razor blade, a knife, you want to, remove something, you're trying to divorce something. I would say divorces are hard. Don't divorce anything. Be careful. If it's all glued together, which sometimes it is, right? If you have an early 20th century piece, sometimes the print is glued to the backboard and the mat is glued on top of that. You don't want to start divorcing that thing because odds are that print in there has taken in all of that adhesive and it's not going to come apart. So leave it well enough alone. But yes, it is okay if you can do that. Can you tell me the name of books to help identify glass bowls dated around 1935? Southern Belle, we could be here for weeks. You want me to do the bibliography that's in my head about this? A lot of books. Now, I will tell you some of the ways that you can find that'll be easier for you. Having published books, let me tell you the whole thing about books and what the deal is. The deal is the photography is expensive. So for books that are going to talk about these types of things, identifying glass bowls, you want to have all the pictures, right? But guess what? Those books, many of them don't have the pictures because the photography is expensive. And printing all of those books becomes expensive. So what happens? The internet stopped all that cost for, of course, the printing of those pictures. So if you go online and you look for this stuff, you're going to find more of the photography, which will help you identify the pieces and educate your eyeballs. So that's one of the things you're going to look for. I would say do it that way. That doesn't mean don't go to a library. That doesn't mean that you can't find identifying glass bowls in a book, but which glass bowls, right? So do you want to look for Murano glass bowls? Do you want to look for German glass bowls? Do you want to look for, Depression glass bowls or Waterford glass bowls? Which is it? So that's what I would think. I would say that you probably will find it better, easier, more cheaply if you look online for the type that you want. And if I can help you narrow this down, I can probably, like which glass bowls you're looking for, I could probably direct you to better research. Want to try my website first? A lot of information under the research tab on my website at drloriv.com. A lot of information. And many of you have done this because many of you have come right on here and said, hey, Dr. Lori, I was on your website and I found a lot of the answers I needed on that website. So you could try there too. Was the shepherd hook used in the late 1800s on necklaces? Yes, I have seen shepherd hooks, variations on a shepherd's hook in the late 1800s. Victorian pieces, you typically will see that shepherd's hook that we all know is a mid-century piece, a mid-20th century piece. Have I seen variations on a shepherd's hook? Yes. Oftentimes on the handmade pieces, you can see a shepherd's hook. Good question. That's a good question too. Yeah, I appreciate them a lot. They're going to help all of us to make more videos and to make the videos that you want, And I appreciate you telling me that. Dr. Lori, I'd like to see you talk to me about this. I talk to you about all different types of objects because Nobody has just one kind of object. Nobody's sourcing just one kind of, you don't go into Goodwill or a thrift store or wherever and there's only one type of object. Oh, it's all glass in the whole store. That's not how it is. So I want you to know and be able to identify quality in all different types of objects, not just one. What's the next popular furniture trend? I'm so tired of mid-century modern, Angela. Oh, that's funny. You're welcome. I'm happy to share my expertise. The next popular furniture trend, I think, is going to be brutalism and metals. I think metals and glass, those combination kinds of pieces are going to be important. Also, pieces that look like other things. You're like, what does that mean, Dr. Lloyd? You know, it's a chair, but it looks like a baseball mitt, that kind of stuff. Or they're going to use materials that are going to be more space age, right? We have a real disposable mentality about furniture that we didn't have even as short period back as maybe 40, 50 years ago, the 70s and 80s. And now it's just kind of like, okay, well, we used that sofa for a couple of years and now we're getting rid of it kind of thing. So I can understand about the mid-century modern. That really has continued a very long time, very long in the tooth. A lot of people are looking for upholstered pieces. A lot of people are looking for floral pieces. And a lot of people are looking for sort of that more comfy pieces. But mainly what I'm seeing is that revival of items that were very popular in the 1980s, like, you know, chairs that look like something else, sort of that conversation piece kind of piece of furniture, as opposed and pieces that have a juxtaposition, metals with glass, or wood with a different type of metal, that kind of thing. But that's a good question. That's a really smart question. Yeah, I can see why you're tired of it. Lori, thank you for always supporting the channel. Some of you always support the channel since the beginning. And the beginning was so many long years and pounds ago. My beginning was so long ago for a lot of you. So thank you very much for continuing to stay for me. Do all bronze sculptures have foundry marks? Many bronze sculptures don't have foundry marks. You know, some of them are actually cast in studio environments and not in foundries. But most of them will have a foundry medallion, particularly those, it's a medallion, it's small. Some of the most famous ones, you know, I think of a French sculpture, for example, they'll have a round foundry mark, or like a Remington, a Frederick Remington sculpture from Roman bronze works in New York. They might have, of course, a medallion. So they could have a medallion, but no, not necessarily does a bronze sculpture have to have foundry marks. Bronze can actually have can be done in a studio, cast in a studio without a foundry mark. Yeah, good question. Smart. That helped everybody. Thank you, Randy. Thank you very much for supporting us. I appreciate that. I appreciate you all being here too. And I'm hearing that you are spreading the word with your friends, your family, your groups, other people who want to just know the truth about what's what, want to learn some stuff, and also want to have some fun doing it, meeting everybody. We have a great community indeed. So I just had a bracelet delivered with stamped this. Okay. And I can't find any reference to what that means. Is this a sterling piece from Hong Kong? Yes. That piece is a sterling piece from Hong Kong. Good, Elizabeth. I'm glad you knew. That makes me happy when you know. You're like, okay, I think it might be this, right? So I like this piece anyway. I'd like to see what it is. Is there a problem with it, or are you just concerned about that actual mark? So yeah, that's what you're looking at there. Oh, excuse me. So don't forget, of course, to sign up for the newsletter, which I'm reminding you of again. And hello, is there a test or a way to determine the quality of silk and what type of silk it is, such as cording used in necklaces, scarves, or a kimono? Hi, Cindy. There are ways to, of course, test any textile. So I want to know basically, is this a cord that's on a necklace, like a choker, like a black cord, and you want to know if it's silk? And if that's the case, then I want to know basically where you're getting this cord from. If it's a kimono or a scarf, it's going to be different because it's used differently, right? So if it's a scarf or a kimono, it's going to be based on the manufacturer. When I was in Japan, it was absolutely fascinating to watch these women go into these shops and actually select kimonos. It was just beautiful, a beautiful process. And to see the difference between the silk that I would say, oh yeah, that looks like silk that you see on, of course, Oriental rugs, or silk that you see, of course, in other kinds of scarves. But the kimono silk is usually very, very high quality. There will be a distinct difference to it. If you see silk on a rug, you can actually take the width of the rug and go this way, and you'll see the color actually change, or actually the texture change as you come back, if it is actually silk. On the necklaces, it's going to depend on the cording. It's going to depend on who manufactured it, whether or not you've got good quality or not. So good question. Thank you. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you very much for your super chats and super stickers. Erica, so nice to talk with you and Devin today. And of course, folks who are basically getting it together, they're getting the confidence to say, I'm moving forward. Nancy, thank you too. I'm moving forward. I'm able to understand what I should be looking for when I'm sourcing and when I should stop sourcing and when I should start listing. When I should get my act together and say, I'm going to start listing this stuff because I want to sell it. Remember, best time for jewelry in terms of selling is probably around holiday time. What's the oldest item you've ever appraised? I appraised a mascara jar that dated to 80 BC. You know who lived in around 80 BC? Cleopatra. That's right. So yeah, that was one of the oldest. I think that was probably the oldest. I've been asked to comment on many different pieces. Roman busts from the 1st century AD, but I think that ancient Egyptian mascara jar, about this big mascara jar from about 80 BC, was the oldest piece that I held in my hand. And that was in an appraisal event. That was not during my museum career. That was in an appraisal event. So kind of cool. I see some cool things. If you watch the videos, I did videos of course, amazing finds, amazing treasures. And you could search for that and see some of the great pieces that I've had the good fortune to appraise and evaluate and discover for people in their home. Some people didn't even know what they had. You know, I had one family who did not know that they had a really, really famous work of art on the wall. It's been in the family a long time. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. But searching the channel and binging the channel is great. Oh, where should I sell my antique overshot glass? Okay, Diana, here's a question all of you guys give me. You give me this question a lot. Where do I sell my X? Where do I sell my Y? Not my ex-husband. My ex, my this, my that, my whatever. And I don't want to confuse you. I said my ex. I do not have an ex. I was never married. I don't have an ex-husband. But my point in this is, it will depend on the object, right? And it will depend on the market for the object. For example, you don't go buy milk at the auto parts store, right? And you don't expect to sell milk at the auto parts store. So you have to think about where's the best place for the buyers to be for that particular item, right? So you want to have something like a lot of eyes on a particular, if you're selling it online, on a particular online platform. Right. So now you want to think, I got to think big. So I got to think like eBay, or I've got to think like, some of those big online platforms if you're going to sell the piece. And then you want to think, well, wait a minute, maybe I want specific collectors who only collect this type of stuff because maybe they'll pay more than just somebody who happens to fall upon my listing. So it does depend. It depends on actually what object you have, the condition of that object, and time period, market, and other factors. But I would say for a shot glass, you probably want a big market for it, right? So you want to think about maybe a large online platform like eBay. Some people prefer a specialty auction, but oftentimes, you're going to have to give up more of the commission, right? The seller's premium if you do a specialty auction, because they're providing for you. The specialty auctioneer people are saying, hey, wait a minute, we've got the collectors here, so you have to give us more money for allowing you to market your piece with us. So decide which you like better. Has your hand fully healed? You're very nice, Patricia. Thank you. Many of you have asked about this. Thank you so much. My hand, I had stitches out yesterday. If you watch my shorts, I showed you the shorts. They had a little bit of trouble counting stitches. There was one thing, some bit of information that was in contrast to what they were seeing on my hand. So it took a little bit longer. The computer said one thing and my hand said another thing. I don't know. It looks like it's healed quite nicely. It needs a little bit more tender, loving care. I have gone to typing a little bit faster. I put myself through graduate school typing, in fact. So I'm about 90 words a minute, which is kind of fast, I think. I can't do that yet, but I hope to get back there. The necklace that I'm wearing are, in fact, trade beads. The trade bead necklace is one that I have had in my life since the 1970s. A long time ago, one of my uncles would travel the world, and he would bring his little nieces something pretty, and this was one of the pretty things that I got. So trade beads, they're very popular. I love the colors. And it reminds me of him. He was a wonderful guy. My dad had great brothers. So Wanted to say, oh, thank you so much. You're very nice. Hallmarked riches. The trolls are not worth our time. That's true. That's true. There are a lot of trolls out there. I do think it's not worth our time, but I also do think that it's important that you understand what's happening. I need your support, because you know what? If what starts to happen, if that continues to happen, that's going to hurt everybody. It's going to hurt you guys. It's going to hurt you guys. So yes, no, I think that the trolls are not worth our time. I'm very happy to spend my time talking with you about your art, antiques, and collectibles, and I appreciate that. What years were the brutalist period? Oh, Solicat, it's nice to see you. A couple of different things. If you don't know what the brutalist period is, it indicates the latter part of the 1960s all the way until about the mid-1980s, depending on where you are looking at artwork. Brutalist art made very famous by many artists. My friend Richard Serra could be considered a brutalist. Many of the works of art that you see, big public sculptures, for example, brutalist pieces. I really like the pieces. They tell a wonderful story, and they talk about sort of this transition from the flower child, everything's happy and great period of the 1960s into the 1970s, a little bit more, I think, angst, if you will. But wonderful pieces if you like minimalism, right? And some of the great artists of that time period include Mark de Souvero and Rudy and Richard Serra and others. But brutalism is a period that I would say the late 1960s, pardon me, sorry, the late 1960s until about I'd say 1984 or so. Yeah, good question. The art historical movements and the art historical periods will be important for you to know. And if you say, well, Dr. Lori, I just collect whatever I can find and I just do that, it's fine. So that's what we're saying. I'd probably get about 40. Deb. Yeah, I knew one of you guys would come up with that one. I said my ex and I went, oh God, they're all going to think I was married. That's funny, 49 cents. Well, you know what? You got to call them like you see them, right? But when you learn the art historical periods, it will be easier for you. I always say, try to have a niche of what you like to collect. That will usually create for you better collections. You'll start out and you'll look at the pieces you first collected and you'll say to yourself, oh my gosh, I can't believe I bought that thing. It's not as good as what I collect now. You really do improve as you continue to educate yourself on these particular types of pieces. So yeah, these questions are great. Have you heard of P. Hartman as an oil painter? I have a large frame work by him. I don't know much about it. Susie Q, can you send me a picture? Because, sure, I'm going to know a lot of these artists. And the P. Hartman that you might be referring to is not the P. Hartman that I'm thinking of in my head. So a visual will help. drloriv.com and go right there, those 3 brown circles, send a photo. It's easy to do. You must fill out the form. Don't just send photos to places anywhere willy-nilly. I won't see them. Send it to, click on that, send a photo, and then fill out the form that's there, attach the photos, and then I will respond to you. You just put them anywhere and you just go, I'm just going to go to our website. I'm just going to send pictures. Don't do it because I won't get back to you on it. So I really want you to do it that way so it gets into my system so I can see it for you. Dear Lynn, very good. Her husband said embrace her faults, so she gave him a hug. One of her faults. It's nice that you're hugging. I like to hear the happy. That's a good one. Thank you for your super chat. I found a brooch today. Coro 1961. Is it normal to have a year in the marking? I have seen some with years in the marking. The copyright will tell you that. If it didn't say 1961, right? The copyright symbol should show you that that particular Coro piece was designed after 1955, when we started to give designers the credit that they deserved with a copyright symbol to protect their designs. So yeah, Gail, that's a good question too. Also remember, sometimes these numbers mean something else. Everybody thinks if it looks like a date, it must be a date, and that's not always the case. So good questions. Yeah, we're all roasting the husbands. That's funny. Fairy Godmama, nice to see you too. Nice to see you too. I bought a vintage compass that does not work. A neighbor tried to see if it works with a magnet, but it's not working. Is it of any value? It can be fixed, probably. The magnet is one of the ways to try it. That was a good idea, Tracy. But yes, it could have value. It will depend on who made the compass, right? Also, what style of compass. Its age could impact value, but it won't be the only thing that will make it valuable. So just because it's in non-working condition, and that's also true of other things that you expect to work, clocks and watches and things like that. So sure, yeah, it can still have value. You know, who knows? You might have a 14 karat gold or a silver compass. You never know. And that would have value in and of itself. So sure, just because it's not working. GBR Capodimonte porcelain worth anything? Yes, yes, yes. Yes, I was just talking about Capodimonte. And yes, certain types will actually be valuable. They should say made in Italy or Italy somewhere. Usually it will say made in Italy right on the stamp if it's a stamp. If it just says Capodimonte and then it says Italy, those pieces also should in fact be marked. I know there's so much information, you're gonna have to watch it over. All of my videos are like this. They're all so much information you have to rewatch. This is why we tell you to use the Binge Link, or we advise you to use the Binge Link. There's a lot of information because basically, you know, I'm trying to get all this information out for you because again, you're going to succeed when you know more. Some of the information you'll say, oh, you know what? Thanks, Gail. Thank you for recognizing me. And I appreciate it. But, you know, sometimes you say, oh my gosh, you know, that doesn't relate to me. I don't care about that because this is all that I do. You know, I only do this particular type of art. You know, I only collect Hummels. Let's use that as an example. And she didn't talk about Hummels here, but some of the selling tips or the reselling tips or the collecting tips or how do you identify a mark or what does the glaze look like or what's earthenware ceramic with glaze look like rather than something else which might relate to your Hummels. You know, a lot of information. And that's what I try to do. I try to jam pack them with a lot of information. Okay. R. Montague, Villa del Rose, S60, 1918 means. Don, I got to get you a way to ask a question. Okay, what does it mean? I need a photo. Send me a photo of it so we can see what you're talking about. So what is my object that I'm looking at is going to be my question. So send me a photo. That would help. All right. Some great questions, some great information. I appreciate, of course, you supporting the channel and mainly supporting my staff because really that's who you're helping with this so we can make more videos. What should we look for in collecting antique books? I bought a first edition Emile Zola. I love that book by Emile Zola, but the condition is not perfect. Okay, I did some video calls today and they had My Friend Flicka, a great story, of course, a great storybook, and it was pretty pricey. People are surprised at that. So here's what you look for in antique books. You look for a strong spine. You look for a novel, Emile Zola, for example, the great realist novelist, right? You look for, of course, a novel and a novelist, very famous. You want the famous names. You want the Grapes of Wrath. You want the Margaret Mitchells, Gone with the Wind. You want, Emile Zola. You want those types of things, okay? You want the correct publisher. What's the correct publisher? The person who first said to that author, I'm publishing that book for you, the Ernest Hemingways. You want the old Philadelphia publishers. Old Philadelphia publishers, yes, Philadelphia and Boston. Great bibliophile cities and great publishers in those cities. If you see a Philadelphia or a Boston publisher and a good novel, you might, of course, have an important and valuable book. I want you to look for a strong spine. I want you to look for marbleized end papers. I want you to look for hardcovers. I want you to look for, make sure that it might be signed. Don't be surprised if it's signed. Mark Twain signed a lot of his books to his friends. And make sure that you have a well-recognizable title, and the publisher is important as well as the copyright date. What should we look for in, okay, that's what it is. If the condition is not perfect, okay, I want you to protect it. Another thing on my specials and shop page, when you go shopping, where it says storage solutions, acid-free Solander boxes for books. It's going to be important to retain that book. Yes, I get compensation when you buy from my shopping page. You go to the shopping page, it'll have Amazon connections and you hit on Amazon and it takes you to those recommended products that I have. But those Solander box books, those Solander boxes for books, specifically family Bibles and other books, are very important and they'll retain your books. Purchase a Tiffany & Company bowl. Is it worth anything? It's made out of pewter. Yes, definitely. So when it says Tiffany & Company, it may not have been made by Tiffany & Company. It may have been made by a different manufacturer and distributed by Tiffany & Company. That might be a distribution mark. If it was made by Tiffany, usually it would say something like Tiffany Studios. It could say Tiffany & Company, but usually it says something else. That looks like it's a distributor's mark because, of course, made out of pewter, it will have value. Yes, the brand names have value. You see the brand names, you're probably going to have some value. Thank you very much for your super chat, Ann, and for your smart question. Trina's here. Thank you very much for being with me. Collier publisher good for old books. Collier can be, sure. But again, I don't want you to go, oh, it's only Lippincott, it's only Collier, or I'm going to throw away this particular publisher. Some of the publishers are just one-time only kinds of things, John Woods or something. But I want you to remember that certain publications, like certain titles by certain artists, certain authors, published in certain cities by certain publishers will be like the jackpot, the lotto, right? That'll be the winning lottery ticket if you have all of those things. But it also has to have a strong spine, a good cover, decorated end papers and such. Can't wait. Get your pens ready. That's right. August 2nd is my next class, Don. That's right. It'll be great to have you. My next class is, of course, and all of my classes are indicated on drloriv.com, the events page. It'll say appearances, the appearances tab. Go there. That's all the events. And, when I'm going to do a new video, when I'm going to be on TV, when I'm going to talk at this particular place, when I'm going to do this class for you. And we did a special class recently, late at night for me, but for the folks who requested it on the West Coast of the United States, because they're 3 hours behind where I live. And it worked out great. We had, of course, we're selling out our classes, and I'm very happy to see that. So obviously we're doing something right. If you have something specific that you'd like me to address in terms of topics at the class, you just put it in the chat, put it in the comments, or of course you can always tell us about it at drloriv.com. Thanks for being with me. I'm Dr. Lori, the PhD Antiques Appraiser. I'll see you next time.